My name is Clara Donnelly, and I'm about to tell you how my own parents threw me away like yesterday's garbage after 12 years of bleeding myself dry for their company. They called me too expensive to keep around. The kicker. Less than a month later, they were blowing up my phone like their lives depended on it. Want to know just how badly they panicked? Buckle up, because this story gets wild. Growing up in the Donnelly household meant breathing industrial engineering before you could spell your own name. My father built Donnelly Industrial Systems from the ground up, starting in our garage when I was 5 years old. I remember sitting cross-legged on the cold concrete floor, watching him sketch blueprints by lamplight, his weathered hands steady despite the late hour. He'd look up occasionally, catch me staring, and wink. "This is your legacy, Clara Bear," he'd say, tapping the papers with his pencil. "One day, all of this will be yours to make even better." I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. While other kids collected baseball cards or dolls, I collected technical manuals. My bedroom walls weren't covered in boy band posters, but in schematic drawings I'd attempted to recreate from memory. At 16, when my classmates were sneaking out to parties, I was sneaking into Dad's office to study his latest projects. Engineering wasn't just in my blood, it was my blood. Mom was different. Where Dad saw potential, she saw practicality. Where he encouraged dreams, she demanded results. She'd been a finance executive before marrying Dad, and she never let anyone forget it. "Numbers don't lie," was her favorite phrase, usually accompanied by a sharp look that could cut glass. She loved me, I suppose, in her own calculated way. Love measured in ROI and quarterly projections. Then there was Evan, my baby brother by 4 years. The golden child who could do no wrong in Mom's eyes, especially after he came home with his shiny MBA from Wharton. While I was getting grease under my fingernails in the factory, learning every machine and process from the ground up, Evan was networking at cocktail parties and memorizing spreadsheets. We were oil and water from the start. But back then, I thought there was room for both of us in the family business. I was wrong about a lot of things. After graduating summa cum laude with my mechanical engineering degree, I had options. Serious options. Boeing wanted me. SpaceX called twice. A startup in Silicon Valley offered me a package that made my eyes water, but I turned them all down without a second thought. The Donnelly name meant something to me. Family meant something to me. Dad's eyes literally misted over when I told him I was coming home to work for the company. "You won't regret this, Clara Bear," he said, pulling me into one of his rare hugs. "We're going to build something amazing together." For 12 years, I kept that promise. Starting at the bottom wasn't easy when everyone knew you were the boss's daughter. The looks, the whispers, the assumptions that I was there for an easy ride. I worked twice as hard as anyone else just to prove I deserved to breathe the same air. 16-hour days were my normal. Weekends. What weekends? While my college friends were getting married and starting families, I was married to Donnelly Industrial Systems. My first major breakthrough came 18 months in. We'd been struggling to land a contract with Hartley Manufacturing, a mid-sized firm that could have opened doors for us. Their existing supplier had them locked in tight, or so everyone thought. I spent 3 months analyzing their production line, identified 7 inefficiencies their current supplier was missing, and presented a solution that would save them 30% annually. Not only did we get the contract, but Hartley's CEO called my father personally to commend my work. "That girl of yours is something special," he'd said. Dad repeated that story at every family dinner for a year. Victory followed victory. I rebuilt our engineering department from the ground up, hiring young talent with fresh ideas while respecting the institutional knowledge of our veterans. We developed proprietary systems that put us years ahead of competitors. By year 5, I was running the entire technical division. By year 8, we were winning contracts worth millions from companies that wouldn't have looked twice at us before. The Greystone manufacturing deal was my masterpiece. They were the whale everyone in our industry dreamed of landing, a massive corporation with factories across 3 continents. Their automation needs were so complex that most firms didn't even bother bidding. It took me 2 years of preparation, countless sleepless nights, and a presentation that I practiced so many times I could have delivered it in my sleep. When they called to say we'd won the contract, I actually cried, right there in my office, tears streaming down my face, because I'd done it. We'd done it. That contract alone was worth $40 million over 5 years. It should have been my crowning achievement. Instead, it became the beginning of the end. Evan had been with the company for 3 years by then, working his way up through the finance department with Mom's not-so-subtle guidance. Where I saw innovation and growth, he saw numbers that needed trimming. Where I invested in our people and processes, he saw bloated expenditures and optimization opportunities. We clashed constantly. But I thought it was just sibling rivalry mixed with professional disagreement. I thought Dad's support would always be enough to balance Mom's favoritism toward Evan. I thought a lot of stupid things. The first sign of real trouble came during a board meeting 6 months after landing Greystone. Evan presented an efficiency analysis of all departments. When he got to engineering, his slide made my blood run cold. He'd highlighted my salary in red with arrows pointing to industry averages and potential savings. He actually stood there in front of our board of directors and suggested that my compensation was out of alignment with market standards. "I'm not suggesting Clara isn't valuable," he said with that snake oil smile of his. "I'm simply pointing out that we could hire 3 junior engineers for what we're paying her. It's about maximizing our human capital investment." I wanted to stand up and scream that those 3 junior engineers couldn't do what I did if they had 30 years to figure it out. That every major contract we'd won in the last decade had my fingerprints all over it. That market standards didn't account for someone who lived and breathed this company like I did. But I kept my mouth shut like a good soldier, trusting Dad would shut this nonsense down. He didn't. He just nodded thoughtfully and said we'd take it under advisement. That night, I called him at home. "Dad, what was that about? You know what I bring to this company." "Of course I do, sweetheart," he said, but his voice was tired. "Evan's just trying to prove himself. You know how your mother is about the numbers. Don't worry about it." But I did worry. I worried when Evan started showing up to engineering meetings uninvited. I worried when he began requesting detailed breakdowns of every project budget. I worried when I noticed him having long lunches with my team members, always ending with him sliding them his business card. The real knife in the back came when I discovered he'd been taking credit for my ideas. I'd developed a new inventory management system that would integrate with Greystone's existing infrastructure, potentially saving them millions more. I'd shared the preliminary concept with the leadership team, planning to present the full proposal the following month. Imagine my surprise when I saw Evan presenting his innovative solution to the board, complete with slides that looked suspiciously similar to my draft materials. "Where did you get this idea?" I confronted him after the meeting. He didn't even have the decency to look guilty. "Great minds think alike, sis. Though I did refine your initial concept significantly. The board seemed impressed, don't you think?" I went to Dad again. This time, I laid out everything. The undermining, the credit stealing, the way Evan was poisoning the well with my team. Dad listened patiently, nodding in all the right places. Then he sighed and rubbed his temples. "Clara, you need to learn to work with your brother. He's family. This company is going to both of you someday. Can't you try to get along?" "Get along?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Dad, he's actively sabotaging me." "That's a strong word, sweetheart. Maybe you're just feeling a little threatened. It's natural when someone new comes into your territory." My territory. As if I was some animal marking my turf instead of a professional trying to protect the department I'd built with my bare hands. Things deteriorated quickly after that. Mom grew colder, barely acknowledging me at family dinners. Evan grew bolder, openly questioning my decisions in meetings and sending helpful suggestions about how to run my department more efficiently. And Dad grew distant, avoiding my calls and cutting our one-on-one meetings short. I threw myself into work even harder, as if success could solve everything. The Greystone project was entering its critical phase, requiring delicate coordination between multiple teams and suppliers. I was juggling a dozen balls in the air, sleeping in my office more nights than not, surviving on coffee and determination. My team rallied around me, working just as hard because they believed in what we were building. We were so focused on the work that I missed the storm clouds gathering overhead. The summons came on a Friday afternoon in October. An email from Mom's assistant, as cold and impersonal as a court summons. Your presence is required in conference room A at 4 p.m. for a restructuring discussion. Restructuring. In all my years at the company, that word had only meant one thing. I walked into that conference room with my head high, even though my hands were shaking. Mom sat at the head of the table like a queen holding court, her silver hair pulled back in that severe bun that made her look like a corporate executioner. Evan sat to her right, a stack of folders in front of him that I knew contained my professional death warrant, and Dad. Dad sat to her left, staring at his hands like they held the secrets of the universe. Sit down, Clara, Mom said, gesturing to the chair directly across from her. The hot seat, the place where careers went to die. I sat. Evan cleared his throat and opened the first folder. I've completed a comprehensive analysis of departmental expenditures across the organization, he began, his voice dripping with false concern. And I'm afraid the engineering department represents our single largest controllable cost center. He clicked through slides showing pie charts and bar graphs, all designed to paint me as a burden on the company's bottom line. My salary was highlighted in red again, but this time he'd added helpful comparisons. Did I know that my compensation was 40% higher than the industry average for engineering directors? Was I aware that my department's budget had grown by 60% over the last 5 years? Of course it's grown, I interrupted. We've taken on projects that are 3 times more complex than anything we'd done before. You can't compare apples to oranges. Actually, Evan smiled that infuriating smile. I can. I've run regression analyses accounting for project complexity and revenue generation. Even with those factors considered, your department remains significantly over-resourced. Over-resourced, like the blood, sweat, and tears my team poured into every project could be reduced to a line item on a spreadsheet. What are you proposing? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Mom spoke for the first time since telling me to sit. Effective immediately. We're restructuring the engineering department. Your position is being eliminated. The words hit like a physical blow. I actually felt the air leave my lungs. You're firing me. We're eliminating redundancies, Evan corrected, as if semantics mattered when you were ripping someone's life apart. I'll be absorbing oversight of engineering into my portfolio. We've identified 3 junior engineers who can handle the day-to-day operations at a fraction of the current cost. I turned to my father, searching his face for something, anything that showed he understood the insanity of this decision. Dad! He finally looked up, and the defeat in his eyes told me everything. The numbers don't lie, Clara, he said quietly, echoing Mom's favorite phrase. We have to think about the company's future. The company's future, I laughed, but it came out harsh and broken. I am this company's future, every major contract we have, every innovation that set us apart, every relationship with key clients, that's all me. You're being emotional, Mom said coolly. This is exactly why we need fresh perspective in leadership. You're too close to see the inefficiencies. Inefficiencies? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Is that what you call 12 years of 90-hour weeks? Is that what you call missing every birthday, every holiday, every chance at a normal life because I was here building something I thought mattered? Nobody asked you to martyr yourself. Evan said, work-life balance is important. Perhaps this will give you a chance to find yours. I wanted to throw something at his smug face. Instead, I looked at each of them in turn. My mother, cold and calculating to the end. My brother, ambitious and ruthless beneath his MBA polish. And my father, the man who'd promised me a legacy, now unable to meet my eyes. When I asked, "Today," Mom replied, "Evan will handle the transition. We'll need your company property, laptop, phone, access cards before you leave. Security will escort you to clear out your office. Security? Like I was some kind of threat. Like I hadn't spent 12 years of my life in this building. Of course, Evan added, shuffling his papers. We'll provide a generous severance package, 3 months' salary, continuation of benefits through year end. All we ask in return is your discretion regarding company operations and a smooth transition of your current projects. They wanted me to train my replacement. They wanted me to hand over everything I'd built and smile while they dismantled it. The audacity was breathtaking. And if I refuse? Mom's eyes narrowed. Then you leave with nothing. Your choice, Clara. My choice. As if any of this had been my choice. I signed their papers. What else could I do? I needed that severance to survive while I figured out what came next. But as I scrawled my name on the non-disclosure agreement, something inside me died. The little girl who'd sat on the garage floor, dreaming of building something beautiful with her father, finally stopped believing in fairy tales. The walk to my office felt like a funeral march. Word had already spread, nothing stays secret long in a family company. And I could see the shock on my team's faces as I passed. Maria, my senior engineer, actually started crying when she saw the security guard trailing behind me. Clara, what's happening? She asked, grabbing my arm. Restructuring, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Evan will be taking over. I'm sure he'll be in touch about the transition. This is insane. Robert, another engineer, said loudly. They can't do this. The Greystone project. We'll be fine. I lied. You're all brilliant. You'll figure it out. But we all knew the truth. Without me there to navigate the complex relationships, to speak the technical language that Evan couldn't even pronounce correctly, to make the 1,000 small decisions that kept a project like this on track, things were going to go sideways fast. I packed quickly, throwing 12 years into a cardboard box, awards for engineering excellence, photos with clients at project launches, a coffee mug that said, "World's Best Boss," that my team had given me last Christmas. Such small things to show for giving up everything. Evan appeared in my doorway as I was packing the last items. I'll need all your project files transferred to my drive, he said, and passwords for the client communication systems. I looked at him, really looked at him, my baby brother, who I'd helped with his math homework, who I'd cheered for at his college graduation, who I'd welcomed into the company with open arms despite Mom's obvious favoritism. When had he become this stranger? Everything's on the shared drive, I said flatly. The passwords are in the standard security protocol. I'm sure you can figure it out. His face tightened. Clara, I know this is difficult, but we both want what's best for the company. No, I said, picking up my box. You want what's best for you. There's a difference. The security guard escorted me all the way to my car, as if I might steal something on the way out, as if I hadn't already given them everything worth taking. I loaded my box in the trunk, handed over my access card and company phone, and drove away from Donnelly Industrial Systems for what I thought would be the last time. The next few days passed in a blur of disbelief and rage. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. out of habit, reach for my phone to check emails, and remember I no longer had a company phone. I'd start to dress for work, then realize I had nowhere to go. 12 years of routine, shattered in a single afternoon. My apartment, which I'd barely seen except to sleep and shower, felt like a prison. Every corner reminded me of the life I'd given up for a company that discarded me like an old piece of equipment. The awards on my walls mocked me. The technical journals stacked on my coffee table seemed pointless now. On Sunday, my mother texted me, "It's best if you don't come to family dinner tonight. We need to maintain a positive atmosphere while the transition settles. I'm sure you understand." I understood perfectly. I was no longer family. I was a problem that had been solved. A cost that had been cut. The funny thing was, it didn't even hurt anymore. You can only be stabbed in the back so many times before you go numb. I spent the first week in a haze of anger and self-pity. I ignored calls from former colleagues, deleted LinkedIn messages asking if I was exploring new opportunities, and basically wallowed in my misery. It wasn't productive, but I figured I was entitled to a breakdown after giving up everything for people who saw me as a line item on a budget. The calls started on week 2. First, it was Maria, texting frantically, "Clara, I'm sorry to bother you, but Evan approved a specification change for the Greystone project that makes no sense. We tried to explain, but he won't listen. Can you please talk to him?" I deleted the message without responding. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Then Robert called. The suppliers are confused about the new payment terms Evan implemented. 3 of them are threatening to halt shipments. He says it's standard financial optimization, but they're talking breach of contract. I let it go to voicemail. Evan was so smart with his MBA and his spreadsheets. Let him figure it out. By the end of week 2, the messages were coming fast and furious. The Greystone project was hemorrhaging problems. Deadlines were slipping. The client was asking questions that Evan couldn't answer. My former team was working around the clock trying to hold things together. But without someone who understood both the technical requirements and the client relationships, they were fighting a losing battle. Then Dad called. I stared at his name on my phone screen for 4 rings before declining. He called back immediately. I declined again. The 3rd time, I finally answered. "Clara, sweetheart, I need your help." "No, how are you? No, I'm sorry." Just straight to what he needed. Typical. "I'm not your sweetheart anymore," I said coldly. "I'm a redundancy. Remember?" "Clara, please. The Greystone project is in trouble. Evan, he doesn't understand the technical specifications. There's something about the automation sequencing that's causing conflicts with their existing systems." "Sounds like an engineering problem," I said. "Good thing you have a whole department for that. Oh wait, you fired the person running it." "This is serious." Dad's voice cracked. "If we lose Greystone, it could destroy us. They're already talking about invoking penalty clauses." "Then I guess you better hope those 3 junior engineers you hired to replace me are as good as Evan's spreadsheets said they'd be." "Clara, I'm begging you. Just come in for a consultation. We'll pay your full rate, whatever you want." Whatever I wanted the last 12 years of my life back. I wanted to have taken that job at SpaceX and be building rockets instead of watching my family's company implode. I wanted parents who valued me for more than what I could produce. "I can't help you," I said. I signed a very thorough separation agreement. Remember, I'm not allowed to discuss company operations. "Clara." I hung up. The calls kept coming. Mom left a voicemail that was all business. "Clara, we need to discuss a potential consulting arrangement. The board is willing to be very generous. Call me back." Evan texted, "Sis, I know things ended badly, but we're family. Can we talk? I really need your help with the Greystone integration protocols." Even clients started reaching out. The CEO of Greystone himself called my personal cell, which I hadn't given him, meaning someone at Donnelly had been desperate enough to share it. "Ms. Donnelly, I'm concerned about the project's direction. Your replacement seems unprepared for the complexities involved. Is there any chance you'd consider returning?" "I'm afraid that's not possible," I told him. "But I'm sure Donnelly Industrial Systems will work everything out. They have a clear vision for cost optimization." He was quiet for a moment. "I see. That's disappointing. You know, if you ever decide to start your own firm, Greystone would be very interested in discussing future projects." After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone for a long time. Start my own firm. The idea had been percolating in the back of my mind since the day I was fired, but hearing a potential client express interest made it suddenly real. That night, Mason called. He'd been my right hand in the engineering department, a brilliant electrical engineer who turned down offers from Google and Apple to work with me. "Clara, I'm done," he said without preamble. "I can't work for that idiot another day. He just asked me to explain why we can't just copy and paste the code from one automation system to another. I'm putting in my notice tomorrow." "Mason, wait, don't do anything rash." "Rash?" He laughed bitterly. "Clara, half the department is already job hunting. Sarah got an offer from Northbridge Systems, Tommy's interviewing with 3 different companies. We stayed because of you, because we believed in what you were building. Without you there, it's just another corporate hellhole. What if? I paused, my heart racing. What if there was another option? What do you mean? Meet me for coffee tomorrow. Bring Sarah and Tommy if they're interested. I have an idea. That coffee meeting turned into a 3-hour strategy session. By the end, we had the skeleton of a business plan. Sarah knew venture capitalists from her Stanford days who might be interested in funding. Tommy had connections with suppliers who were fed up with Donnelly's new payment terms. Mason had already registered several patents for innovations we'd developed together. Innovations that belonged to us, not Donnelly. Within a week, I had commitments from 6 of my best engineers to join a new venture. Within 2 weeks, I had meetings scheduled with potential investors. It turned out that my reputation in the industry was worth more than my parents had calculated on their spreadsheets. The panic at Donnelly must have reached fever pitch because Evan showed up at my apartment on a Saturday morning, looking haggard. His usual polish was gone, replaced by desperation. Clara, please, I know I screwed up, I know I was an ass, but the company is falling apart. Greystone is threatening to pull the entire contract. The board is talking about replacing me. Mom and Dad are barely speaking. Please, just help me fix this. I looked at my little brother, really looked at him. He'd lost weight. His expensive suit hung loose on his frame. The cocky MBA who'd stolen my ideas and engineered my firing was gone, replaced by a scared kid who'd bitten off more than he could chew. Why should I asked. Because we're family, he said weakly. We were family when you convinced them to fire me. We were family when you took credit for my work. We were family when Mom texted me not to come to Sunday dinner. Where was family then? He flinched at each point. I was jealous, he admitted. You were always Dad's favorite, the engineering genius who could do no wrong. I thought if I could prove I was better at running the company, they'd finally see me as more than just the spare kid with the business degree. So you destroyed my life to prove a point. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought you'd consult, help with the transition. I never imagined you'd actually walk away completely. What did you think would happen when you treated me like an expendable resource instead of a person? He had no answer for that. Go home, Evan, I said tiredly. Tell Mom and Dad that actions have consequences. Tell them their cost optimization was successful. They cut me out, saved 40% on salary. I'm sure the board will be impressed. Clara, go home. After he left, I sat in my quiet apartment and thought about family, about loyalty, about the prices we pay for the things we think we want. My parents had wanted a more profitable company. Evan had wanted recognition. They'd all gotten exactly what they'd asked for. The next month was a whirlwind of activity. Donnelly Enterprises was officially incorporated, and yes, I kept a variation of the name, partly out of spite and partly because I'd earned it. Our initial funding round exceeded expectations. Clients who'd worked with me for years were quietly letting their contracts with Donnelly Industrial Systems expire, waiting to sign with my new company instead. The day we signed our first major client, Hartley Manufacturing, the same company that had given me my first big break, Mason brought champagne to our temporary office space. To new beginnings, he toasted. To knowing our worth, I countered. As we drank cheap champagne from paper cups, my phone buzzed with yet another call from Dad. I let it go to voicemail, but this time I listened to the message later. Clara, it's your father. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. I failed you. I let the numbers become more important than my daughter. Your mother and I. We're getting counseling. The company is struggling. Yes. But that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because I miss you. I miss my Clara Bear. Even if you never forgive me. I wanted you to know that I'm proud of you. I hear you're starting your own firm. You're going to do amazing things. You always have. I played the message 3 times, then deleted it. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. But as I looked around at my new team, at the future we were building together, I realized I didn't need to go backward. I'd spent 12 years trying to preserve someone else's legacy. Now it was time to build my own. 6 months later, Donnelly Enterprises had grown from 6 employees to 30. We'd secured contracts worth more than I'd ever handled at my parents' company. The industry press was calling us the startup to watch, and headhunters were constantly trying to poach my team with ridiculous offers. But my people stayed because they knew what I'd learned the hard way: being valued is worth more than any salary. I heard through the grapevine that Donnelly Industrial Systems had managed to keep the Greystone contract. But just barely. They'd had to renegotiate terms that cost them millions in penalties. Evan was still technically in charge of engineering, but they'd hired a consultant at 3 times my old salary to actually run things. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mom reached out once through a lawyer, suggesting that my use of the Donnelly name constituted trademark infringement. My attorney laughed for 5 solid minutes before drafting a response that essentially said, "Try it and see what happens." We never heard from them again. The last time I saw any of them was purely by accident. I was meeting a client at an upscale restaurant downtown when I spotted them at a corner table: Mom, Dad, and Evan, looking like they were having an intense discussion. Dad saw me first. Our eyes met across the crowded dining room, and for a moment, time stopped. He looked older, grayer, smaller somehow. He started to stand, maybe to come over. But I shook my head slightly and turned away. My client arrived moments later, full of enthusiasm about our upcoming project. As we discussed technical specifications and timelines, I could feel my family's eyes on me. But I didn't look back. I'd spent too long looking backward, trying to preserve something that had never really existed outside my imagination. After dinner, as I waited for my car, Evan approached. I tensed, ready for another confrontation, but he just stood there awkwardly. "You look good," he said finally. "Happy." "I am." "For what it's worth, you were right about everything. I wasn't ready. I'm still not ready. I probably never will be." "You'll figure it out," I said, and meant it. "Or you won't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore." He laughed, but it was hollow. I really did destroy everything, didn't I? The company, the family, all of it. "No," I said as my car arrived. "You revealed what was already broken. In a way, you did me a favor. I spent 12 years trying to fix something that didn't want to be fixed. Now I get to build something better." I got in my car and drove away, leaving him standing on the sidewalk, in my rearview mirror. I could see him getting smaller and smaller until he disappeared entirely. It felt like a metaphor for my old life, still there, somewhere behind me, but no longer defining where I was going. That night, I worked late at my new office, reviewing proposals and planning our expansion. My assistant knocked on my door around 9. "Clara, go home," she said. "Whatever it is can wait until tomorrow." I started to protest, then stopped. She was right. It could wait. I was building something sustainable this time, something that wouldn't demand every piece of my soul as the price of admission. As I packed up my laptop, I thought about that little girl on the garage floor, watching her father work by lamplight. She'd wanted so badly to be part of something bigger than herself, to carry on a legacy, to make her family proud. She'd gotten her wish, in a way. She'd built something. She'd carried a company on her shoulders. She'd made her family profitable. But she'd never made them proud. Not really. Because you can't make someone proud who only sees you as a resource to be optimized, a cost to be controlled, a problem to be solved. I locked the office and headed home to my new apartment, bigger now, with actual furniture and art on the walls. My life no longer fit in a cardboard box. It had expanded to fill the space I'd finally given it. My phone buzzed with a text from Maria. "Drinks tomorrow after the Hartley presentation. The whole team wants to celebrate." "Absolutely," I typed back. "First round's on me." Because that's what you do when you know your worth. You celebrate the people who see it too. You build something together that's stronger than any family legacy, more valuable than any cost reduction, more real than any promise whispered over blueprints in a garage. They'd called me too expensive, and they were right. I was too expensive for people who thought my value could be calculated on a spreadsheet. Too expensive for those who saw dedication as weakness and loyalty as leverage. Too expensive for a family that confused blood with belonging. But for the people who recognized what I brought to the table. For the clients who trusted my expertise and the team that believed in our vision. For the future I was building with my own hands. I was worth every penny. As I drove through the city streets, past the building where I'd spent 12 years of my life, I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel betrayed, or bitter, or broken. I felt free. Free to define my own worth. Free to build my own legacy. Free to choose my own family. The family of brilliant minds and dedicated hearts who'd chosen to build something new with me. They'd fired me for being too expensive. In the end, it was the best investment in myself I never chose to make. Because sometimes the most expensive thing you can do is stay somewhere that doesn't value you. And sometimes the richest you'll ever be is the moment you walk away from people who see your worth as a liability instead of an asset. My parents had given me the Donnelly name, but I'd earned the right to define what it meant, and in my definition, it meant excellence, integrity, and knowing exactly what you're worth, even if that makes you too expensive for people who never deserved you in the first place. Especially then,